Welcome to a brand new episode of building a large HO scale layout. Today we add a brand new building and we also make some major adjustments to the track plan. So here is the first major industry that I will be adding, which will be inspired by the sugar mill in my town. Now I do know that this is a part of the Great Western Railway, but this industry and many others do connect to the BNSF subdivision that I'm loosely modeling. You can see here that they store some freight, so they're obviously ready to be picked up. And there's also a large yard and a facility behind these silos, which is still used today. Now I do very much encourage you to try to find places like this in your own town or maybe your own area. It makes for a little bit more better ideas and a little bit more fun. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to build the Prairie Co-op building by Walthers. These are the specific dimensions. For glue, I'm going to be using the Tamiya extra thin cement, which does have a small little brush, which will make things a lot more easier. Now to open the box to see what we get. And as you can see, there are a good amount of pieces. This model does come with its own decal sheet, even some letters to make your own signs. And as usual with these Walthers kits, you do get a single instruction sheet. What I did in this case was take all the parts out and identify which moldings will get a spray paint first. I decided to spray the main building parts first, and the others will get sprayed later on. I used Rust-Oleum flat white paint and primer, and I sprayed very lightly to make sure I didn't overdo it. You can see here the difference between the non-painted and the painted. One extremely helpful item to use when making models is sandpaper. Once you sand down and smooth out all the parts and rough edges, you can now start to glue it all together. I like to do all the small pieces first so I can put it together a little bit easier down the line. The model does come with a clear piece of plastic so you can make realistic glass windows. An X-Acto knife is definitely needed for cutting away the rough parts where the parts were actually attached to the molding. Then it's pretty much a matter of patience and taking the time to put every little piece together. Here's a nice little time lapse of the build process. And overall, it took about 3 or 4 hours to build at the end. Okay, before we place the new buildings on the layout, we must adjust the track plans. You may or may not notice, but I have added a completely new line in the back, which was not there in the last episode. And here it is. This is going to be the new main line that goes right past the yard and will continue to the other section of the layout. So the whole reason for this was because I needed a yard lead, which I didn't have in the previous plan. So this image I found is somewhat similar to what I'll be going with some obvious differences of course. Now mine is only going to be a single main line, but I still have an arrival and departure track, the yard body, and the yard lead. Now the whole purpose of the yard lead is to allow the switcher to not affect the main line at all. And when exiting the yard, the train will go through here and eventually connect with the main line. And that'll happen somewhere over here. First thing I'll be doing is removing that one building and the cars next to it. Then I'm going to move the switch to over here because this will be a lot better for switching operations. I simply remove the nails I used to tack it down. Then I could easily remove the switch. And this is also a big reason why I haven't glued anything down yet. To replace it, I'll just be putting some straight track here to maybe serve as an engine fueling station or something of that sort. Now to install the switch back where I needed it to be. This now looks a lot more cleaner than before. I then install some flex track, making sure to keep them at least 1 inch apart, and of course straightening everything out. If you're curious, this is the exact flex track I get at my local hobby shop. Alright, so this is pretty much the progress we have so far. Everything's been straightened out and put pretty much where I want it to be. Now we have more of a better and more realistic train layout. But I also do want to mention that when making your own layout, you can do pretty much anything you want. There is no for sure way of model railroading. I did also add another piece of flex track to the main line to see kind of where it's going to go in the future. I did of course add the buildings to the layout, and the first one is weathered, but the main part, this big part right here, will be weathered in the next episode. At this point I'm pretty happy with how things are turning out, and I do always say that over and over again, but in this case I am very happy with how it turned out. My goal is to try to make this a realistic layout and as close to a real operation how it would operate in the real world. Well, we're just about coming to the end of the episode. I didn't get too much done that I wanted to get done in this episode. I've just kind of been busy with things outside of doing YouTube, but hopefully you still did learn a couple things, and maybe you can apply some of this information to your own layout. If you want to learn a little bit more about train operations and how actual trains work in real life, I suggest maybe looking up DJ's Trains. I've been watching him for a little while. He makes excellent videos on how operations really work. And the reason why he knows so much is because he's an actual CSX engineer. And with that said, there's plenty of other YouTubers that you can check out. And if there's any suggestions, I would love to hear them down in the comments below. So that's going to be a wrap on episode 2 of building a large HO scale layout. And on that note, thank you guys for watching. I will catch you guys in the next one.